ALTBAYS.
ALTBAYS. I can't get enough, man, of this song.
It's quite good.
I really like it. I know. We're live. ALTBAYS Show brought to you by ALTBAYS.nz. It's Wednesday. It's a beautiful week, and we're happy to be live once again. I think it's week 12, which is pretty cool. We are on our show 39. Yay! That's good. You can watch our shows on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays at 7 p.m. on YouTube. And the show becomes available on YouTube just as soon as it finishes. And then on the next day, we upload to all the podcast platforms, all the main ones, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon. What's the one that you listen to? Podcast Addict.
Podcast Addict.
Addict, yeah. So we're there too, iHeartRadio. So good the amount of support that we're getting from the community. So if you want to support this show, the best thing that you can do is to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, it helps us to monetize, it helps us to reach more people, our engagement becomes bigger, and then we get to bring cooler people to this show. Okay, it's true. Everybody's awesome who's been so far.
Do we get paid?
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there, Alistair.
I'll come back.
Having you tonight's gonna help us to get there.
Oh yeah,
that's for sure.
Good, okay.
Yes, but we're not there yet. So subscribe to our channel so we can pay Alistair to be here. Come on.
Heaps. Pay me heaps.
It would help, right?
It sure would.
Hey, this show is live and we don't edit. So send your questions to us. We have the live chat going on, so if you want to have a chat with Alastair, if you want to ask Fabian a question, do it. Today is May the 4th, and for the people who are fan of Star Wars, apparently it's a big day. So we have this cool show. We're going to talk about the stars. We're going to talk about the planets. We're going to talk about geology. We're going to talk about artificial lights. We're going to talk about Elon Musk.
In war.
And we talk about war, because if we're going to talk about stars, we might as well talk about war, right? Mr. Roberts, how are you?
I'm doing all right. May the 4th be with you.
You're looking great.
Thank you, thank you. I'm pretty dressed up today. I do have to admit from the get-go, I have probably not ever watched the full series or even a complete film of Star Wars. It is not my cup of tea, but I support those who like it. I'm simply on top of the bandwagon, just in a bit flashier way.
So you're inclusive.
Oh yeah, it's got to be inclusive in this
That's the trend
world.
these days.
I do have a shout out today.
Oh no.
Shout out, although I think he's 2. So shout out to Tobias, little baby, happy birthday, may the 4th be with you.
Yeah, true.
So word, brother.
2 years old, eh?
It's pretty cute.
Fantastic.
Nice baby.
Yeah.
Who are we talking to? I keep hearing this beautiful mellow voice through
Is
my
it just
ears.
one shout out?
Just the one, yeah.
Oh, cool.
I don't shout often.
Do you want to give a shout out to Adam for providing some Coro Days
You
for
mean
you?
this beautiful Coro Days, this extra pale ale from Blue Fridge in Aotearoa?
All the beers are good. The beers are all good.
beers are good.
Who is this beautiful voice I'm hearing? It's rich, it's full of life and knowledge. Who's that across the table?
We're talking to Alastair Brickell
Oh, yes, we are.
Alastair, nice to see you, man.
Thanks for inviting me.
Thanks
it's great
for
to be here.
Oh, man.
You got a great setup here, guys. Number 39, you were saying.
39.
That's not bad. That's not bad for a small town.
It's a great
I
number.
know, right?
Well done. Yeah, well done.
And thanks for accepting our invitation.
My pleasure.
Taylor and I went to Stargazers, I think it was last year, Taylor? And we had such an amazing night. It's like one of those, like sometimes in life you get those, something happened to you and you rethink life.
Oh, good.
And I loved that, because it doesn't happen all the time. But when you look at how big things are and how small we are, and just listening to you, like explaining things and breaking things down in very simple terms, I was like, this is cool. So thanks for that.
You're quite welcome. Yeah, it does make you feel small, doesn't it?
Yes.
You're a very small cog in a huge wheel. It's very humbling, the whole thing.
What is the Stargazers for the people who have no idea what we're talking about?
Well, Stargazers is out of Katoonu, not far from where the beer comes from, and it's a bed and breakfast. But we also have an observatory with a big telescope and a dome, rotating dome, and we have the dark skies, which is the important thing. So we give our guests a stargazing tour, like you guys had. You had a short one, but we do quite a long one without proper guests. So it's a bit of an attraction for the area, and it's something that can happen all year round. It's not just limited to the summer. when people are out on the beach and things, they can do stargazing all year round.
You say a
And we're-
stargazing tour.
Yeah, stargazing tour. Yeah, so we do a whole bunch of things actually. We start out outside the dome, just looking at constellations, identifying constellations and the Southern Cross, and showing people how to find south in the sky. Do we do that with you? I can't remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, because a lot of people don't know how to find south. I mean, in the northern hemisphere, you got a star, the pole star in Polaris in the North Pole, but in the southern hemisphere, you haven't got one. So you have to use the Southern Cross and a couple other stars, and you can learn how you can find south, which is important. And look at the Milky Way, talk about the Milky Way, how stars form, where we are in space, the distances, because the distances are huge, absolutely mind-bogglingly huge. And then we talk about the evolution of stars, and then we go inside the dome and look at various stages of evolution of stars.
So good.
Yeah.
And
And then we have meteorites. And we must talk about meteorites later on, too. Ask me about meteorites later on, a new meteorite, potentially.
So hopefully not a meteorite going to asteroid. It's just the meteorite staying meteorite.
Well, it came from an asteroid, and it's maybe come down to Earth just a little while ago in New Plymouth.
Oh, that's very exciting.
there you go.
Yeah.
So, Alastair, just to start on a good pace here, a lot of people think they're too important in life, and then I love that perspective that you gave us. So, like, how small are we?
Yeah.
Just for those people who think they're the shit and they're not.
Yeah. Every politician should come and do a stargazing tour. That'd be good for them, I think.
There you go.
Yeah, it puts it in your place, really, doesn't it?
It would, yes.
Yeah. Because as you know, we've got that down the corridor. Do we do the corridor walk with you with the planets all lined out as the distances are, and you just realize how far away some of the planets are?
Yes. So what's the easiest way, like like in a comparison way, like if you think about our galaxy, so like there are many galaxies out there,
Yeah, billions,
right?
absolutely billions.
So like if you keep if you keep shrinking them, like as far as we know, how small are we?
Very, very tiny. The thing is, there's so many stars out there. Nobody appreciates how many stars there are. And one analogy is if you think of a star as a grain of sand, okay? So if you wonder how many stars you can see on a dark sky night, a dark sky place like us here, with a naked eye, you can see maybe a thimbleful of stars. So there's a few thousand stars you can see with a naked eye. But in our Milky Way, if you can imagine a dump truck full of sand, one of Hopper's dump trucks full of sand, a lot of thimblefuls of sand in that dump truck. That's how many stars there are in our Milky Way, which is our galaxy. But our Milky Way galaxy is only one of billions of galaxies in the universe. So the number of stars in the known universe, if you can imagine you're sitting running across the road or railway tracks, train going by with boxcars full of sand, full of stars. Each boxcar is going by every second, one boxcar per second. How long do you think you'd have to be waiting at that level crossing for all the stars in the known universe to go by? So each boxcar is full of sand, each sand grain is a star.
You're going to tell me it's bigger than weeks, aren't you? You're going to tell me it's bigger than months?
I am going to tell you that, yes.
You're going to tell me it's bigger than years?
I am.
Is it bigger than tens of years?
Yes, it is.
Is it bigger than hundreds of years?
Divided as 100. 100 years.
100
You'd be waiting
years.
for 100 years for those boxcars
Of
to be going by
seconds.
one every second, full of sand, for each grain of sand is a star. That's how many stars there are in the known universe. And we're all learning about more and more stars every time because we're getting better cameras, better telescopes. We can see fainter and fainter things. So it's probably going to be even more than that if you ask me in 10, 20 years'
I
time.
seem to hear that every time they say NASA or part of that would be building a new telescope to be able to see, and they point at the darkest point of the sky, and all of a sudden that previous darkest point in the sky is just another sky again full of stars.
Exactly. Yeah, they're talking about Hubble deep field, an ultra deep field. Yeah, they pointed at a dark piece of sky, no stars there, and you blow that up, the exposure I think was 100 hours of Hubble telescope time, which is not cheap. And everything you see in that, you got a poster like that. Everything you see, every dot is not a star; it's a galaxy.
Jeez.
Oh
Yeah. And this is a piece of sky where you see nothing with a normal telescope. So we're not going to run out of stars in a hurry or galaxies.
No.
So you don't have to worry about that. One thing you do not have to worry about.
You don't have to worry about anything if we're that small.
Have you watched Rick and Morty?
No.
The cartoon?
No, I haven't.
You're gonna love it.
don't
No
know that
joke. Like it's great humor, but like hey, you've watched it, hey.
I've never seen it.
You guys should. Hey, Taylor.
Thank you for that.
This would be stupid.
I'll be right home here.
No, because like honestly, like they do this all the time. Like they show us how huge and how gigantic, you know, this thing that we're in is, and it's great sense of humor. So I'll send it to you.
Is it a Kiwi thing or?
No, it's American.
Okay.
It's huge. Yeah, I think you like
sure
it.
it is, yeah.
Alastair, do you believe that there were people before us that knew as much as we know now on Earth?
Not that I'm aware of. I don't know any evidence of that.
But you know, like that, there's a lot of
we don't know everything.
geologists, right? Like who find things that like civilizations, you know, like we never heard about this civilization, and then we start like. Would you guess at least? I know that is not a thing for you guys to guess, but like, would it be possible that something washed us out of here?
Well, it is possible, yeah, but you'd think there'd be some sort of evidence left behind, some physical structures or buildings or things like that. I'm not aware of any, but open-minded about it.
I'll just say outright, it sounds absurd. If you had a civilization with such advanced technology, what technology do we have now that could completely destroy what we currently have to make it invisible, that wouldn't destroy the planet?
Yeah.
So like, how could it disintegrate?
But also, like, have we created many big things that will mark this time?
We've done things with shorelines, ports and things like that. Those sort of things will probably endure for quite a while.
Right.
But it depends on your time scale. You're talking 100 years or 1 million years or 100 million years or 1,000 million years.
That's why it's good to talk to a geologist.
Because, well, that's why, okay, bring geology and you've got continental drift and things, the plates are always shifting.
Yes.
And you'll know, you guys are from South America, the Andes are formed because the Pacific Ocean is going down under the Andes, making volcanoes, and the rock comes up. It's called andesite. We have it in the Coromandel, named after the Andes. So that ocean floor is disappearing. Given enough time, given a few million years, it'll disappear. So the ocean is not all that old. So any civilization left stuff behind on the edge of those continents.
Strike one.
If you strike 3 times, you're out. So
Okay. I'll bash it.
sorry.
Yeah. So
the sea is not that old.
No, the sea is quite young, and this is how we found out that the continents actually moving apart. It was a lot of these theories. People don't believe that these incredible things could happen, and everybody laughed at people, said that all the continents shift and move, and there's continental drift, and everybody said no, that can't be true. Every scientist in the world, except one guy called Alfred Wegener, a German, he was the guy that brought the theory up, and it was poo-pooed for decades. And when I was at university in Canada in the 60s, it finally became accepted, and it was because they could see the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, which goes to the middle of the Atlantic, the oceans are actually pulling apart. And Iceland is actually the surface, the only bit of that that's at the surface. And of course, they had volcanoes there just a few months ago. Remember those volcanoes in Iceland? Went on and on and on and on. It was fantastic. You guys are YouTube people. It's all over YouTube.
Oh, I'm not online. No.
Yeah, it was really interesting. So that's where you can see on land North America moving away from Europe. And it's moving away about an inch, 2.5 centimeters a year. Yeah, and it has been for millions of years.
How? Okay, so that's obviously gonna impact where humans build houses and everything, right?
Well, not really, because it's such a slow process.
Right.
No.
So let's just dive straight into the climate change thing, because that's what we hear all the time, right? So the damage that we're causing, it's causing the sea level to rise.
Yeah.
So how much of that, from the perspective of a geologist, is actually accurate? Or what's your take on it?
Well, there's no doubt the sea level is rising, but the question is, what's causing it? Is it our fault, or is it a natural process, or a combination of the two? And as geologists, you're used to looking at long time scales. Astronomers even worse, but geologists look at long time scales. And you can look back in the past, we can see signs of last ice age, and the one before that. And we have ice ages that last about 100,000 years. World is covered in ice. Then you get about 10 to 15,000 years of warmth, which we're in now. Then you get another 100,000 years of ice, 10 to 15,000 years of warmth, and so the cycle repeats. So the default setting for the Earth is ice, okay? And it's actually getting colder. You look at geological time, the Earth is actually getting colder and colder and colder. And these ice ages, I think, it worries me a little bit. You can look back, we've had 20 ice ages in the last 2 million years, okay? Each ice age is about 100,000 years long, but each ice age in the last 4 or 5, which we have good records from ice cores in Antarctica, you can see that each ice age is getting a little bit longer and a little bit colder. A little bit longer, a little bit colder. So, we're in between ice ages now, and the chances are very good, I'd say 100%, that we're going to go into another ice age. Not in our lifetime, probably, hopefully, but it will happen. And the odds are that it will be longer and colder than it was in the past. And that's not a good prospect, And so the last ice age ended about 16,000 years ago, okay? And since then, we've been warming. who would have thought? We're coming out of an ice age, so the Earth warms. But it's not. Nothing is straightforward. It's always up and down. There's lots of cycles. But the overall trend is we're warming because we're coming out of an ice age which ended about 16,000 years ago. Now, I went to university in Montreal in Canada when that ice age was on, 16,000 years ago. Montreal was under 3 kilometers of ice. That's pretty serious stuff. It'll happen again. Anyway, so we're coming out of the ice age from 16,000 years. And then the sea level rose because the glaciers are, melting. So the sea level rose. And then it actually went out further than it is now. And it came back in. 6,000 years ago, it came back in. Only 6,000 years ago, it came back in. And you know where the airport is in Whitianga? That was the shoreline 6,000 years ago. It was about 4 meters higher than it is now. And since then, the sea's been going out. But it's not a steady out. It's back and forth, back and forth. But the overall trend is out. So if Jesus Christ had been coming to visit New Zealand, he would have been swimming about where the mobile station is, John Gaskell Drive. That's where the beach was. Only 2,000 years ago. Wow. Now, it sounds like a long time to us, because we live 100 years.
I've got to ask, is he doing freestyle, backstroke, dolphin diving?
He walks on the water, doesn't he? Oh, isn't that the story?
Boom.
Perfect. I love it.
He does, yeah. But if he wanted to get his feet wet, that's the place to do it. But around where the mobile station is. So the sea went out past the present shoreline, it went out, and now it's coming back in slowly, because we're warming slightly, coming out of that, what we call the little ice age. And
yeah. Is that your wife?
Oh, apologies.
She wants to ask a question, man. She's like,
"Hi, Mum. I'm on a live show. Are you wanting to ask Alastair a question?" No. All right, Bob. I love you.
Bring home some milk. Is that the story?
I know, right? That's the beauty of going live.
Yeah,
so
fantastic.
she lives in Hamilton.
That was cool. Okay. Yeah. That doesn't mean that what humans are doing, it's contributing to some sort of damage or not.
Well, there's a bigger picture. I think there's a bigger thing at work here. We don't know exactly what it is. We have ideas what's causing it. But of course, in the last ice age, 100,000 years ago, or it ended 16,000 years ago, the sea level was 120 meters lower. You could walk to the South Island, you could walk to Great Barrier Island, you could walk to Stewart Island from here. You could, the sea level was miles offshore. So things, we think everything's got to be the same. This is, right now when we're living, is perfect. That's the way the Earth should be forever. It's not. Nothing is static. Everything is moving. It's always changing. You have to look at the big picture, and we just see a little tiny snapshot. And we think if something changes, it's our fault, and it's the end of the world.
Right.
It's not. But there's no doubt the sea level is rising because we're coming out of this so-called little ice age, which ended in about 1850-ish. 1850. It went from 1300 to about 1850. And that's when the little ice age ended and the sea level started to rise again, and that's what's been happening now. So we're seeing that trend, and it's not our fault. It's just a natural process.
So what's misleading a significant portion of people? What's creating a field of climate science? What misapprehension are they under?
I think people just don't understand natural processes. They don't look at the long timescales, the big picture, and we think it's probably controlled. The big ice ages are controlled by the changes in the Earth's orbit around the sun, because the Earth goes around the sun, but it's not a circle; it's actually an ellipse. Okay, and that ellipse changes over time. It gets bigger and smaller, and that changes how close we are to the sun. That affects our climate. The Earth, at the moment, sits at about 23 degrees on a tilt as it goes around the sun, but that tilt changes over 100,000 years. That changes as well, and then there's a precession. The North Pole spins like a top every 22,000 years, and those cycles line up with changes in our ice ages and things. And so those are what's controlling on a big scale. We think. We don't know. The science is not settled. One thing you can say for sure: the science is not settled. We're always learning, and thank goodness for that. It's great. We don't want to know everything, do we? It'd be awfully boring if we knew everything, wouldn't it?
No, we don't know everything.
We don't want to know everything. We want to have a few mysteries out there.
I don't know. I always like to know what I'm getting for my birthday. I like to know. I like to look forward to things.
Well, can I tell you a little bit of mystery about a stone?
About that?
A little stone.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, go on.
Okay. I got a call about a month ago from a woman who had done the tour like you had done. And as you know, we talk about meteorites. We have meteorites. We talk about meteorites. And she had a friend in New Plymouth who is a landscape gardener, and he was working in a big compound with a sealed driveway. And about midday, he heard this noise, it was like someone throwing a brick on a car window and the glass breaking. And he thought, oh, bloody kids. He ran outside there, and there was no kids around. He came back inside in the parking lot, and he found a little stone, about that size, not very big, and it was cold. It had ice on it. Okay? And he thinks it could be a meteorite. So his friend of his got in touch with me. And it's sort of counterintuitive because you think meteorites are going to be hot. Some can be hot, but some can also be cold. So it's very hard to explain how this stone on an autumn afternoon in the middle of the day became so cold that it had ice on it. And as he held it, the ice slowly disappeared and it became warm again. So it's very interesting. I think it's really interesting because we've only had about 10 meteorites land in New Zealand. The last one to land was in Ellerslie in Auckland. Do you guys remember? You probably weren't
No.
here. Yeah, strangely not far from the biggest telescope in Auckland, the One Tree Hill Observatory. In the afternoon, it was the Archer's house in Tacoma Street in Ellerslie, and they were in the house, and this stone came through the roof, hit the couch, bounced up the ceiling, back down again by the couch. Half an hour before, their baby had been lying on that couch. And this is what's called now, it was called the Ellerslie meteorite, but it's now called the Auckland meteorite because you have to name meteorites after where they land, and there's actually an Ellerslie in Australia where there was a meteorite. So it's now called the Auckland meteorite, and it's a beautiful one. It's about that sort of size, and you can see it in the Auckland Museum if you ever go to the Auckland Museum. So that happened 18 years ago, if my math is correct. So these things are possibly coming in quite quickly. So this rock, that one in New Plymouth, doesn't look like an ordinary meteorite. It's missing a few features, but it's got a few positive features. So we're now getting it analyzed by a guy called James Scott down at Otago University. And he is a meteorite expert, and he is the one that analyzed the one that fell in Ellerslie. So we should know in a week or two what the story is. And the other thing is we went down to New Plymouth to have a look at it about 3 weeks ago, and I took my microscope down there. And on it, you can see a little bit of green paint, a little bit of metal and green paint where it's fractured. And we went back to the site, and the buildings are all covered in green paint. So it sounds like it has hit the buildings and landed. And I was speaking to a chap called Steve Butler, who happens at the moment to be the head of the Royal Astronomical Society in New Zealand, and he knows a few things about meteorites. And he lives down in Invercargill. And he was saying he was working at the Bluff Smelter on the roof, doing a job on the roof. And he remembers seeing a small hole about that sort of size, again about an inch or two across, on the roof with the metal all bent inwards. So that suggests to me that these things are falling a lot more often than we think. And most of them land in the ocean, of course, because the Earth's 2/3 ocean. So most of them land in the ocean. And the ones in New Zealand, the land in New Zealand, you're not going to see it. If it happens at nighttime, you probably won't see it, especially the small ones. Most of New Zealand's farmland or forest, you will never find them there. And most of these meteorites look like ordinary rocks, even to a geologist. So if you don't see it landing, it's just a rock.
So if those people listening suddenly hear us scream out in
Keep
shock...
your hard hats handy.
I'll get under this table. It's quite solid, actually, isn't it?
Yeah, it'll probably be pretty good, yeah. Yeah, that's right. And the stuff falling all the time. There's thousands of tons every day as dust.
You mentioned the man in Otago being a meteorite expert. Here, he's 9 other specimens to look at in New Zealand before this one.
It's not many, is it?
No, you're going to say, with the billions upon possibilities of compositional makeups,
yeah,
that must be hard to be an expert when you have so few to look at.
Well, there's only 3 or 4 kinds of meteorites. And
Go on, please.
Do you want to know what?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, please.
Okay, well, meteorites come from the asteroid belt. Okay, the asteroid belt sits between Jupiter and Mars. Basically, the asteroid belt is a bunch of big rocks, several kilometers across, a lot of them, and right down to very fine dust. And the asteroid belt was a failed planet. When the planets were forming, the stuff at the asteroid belt tried to join together to become a planet. But every time Jupiter passed by, and Jupiter being the biggest planet, has huge gravity, every time it passed by, it pulled them all apart again. So over the years, they could never form a proper planet. So you've got all these rocks, if you like, floating around, and every so often they hit each other and get tossed out of that orbit, and occasionally the Earth runs into one, and then we have a meteorite. But some of the big asteroids are sufficiently big that they have formed basically a mini planet, if you like. And so the iron is settled into the core of the meteorite. And then on the surface you get a bit of what you could call perhaps soil. In between you get a mixture of the iron and the silicates, the soil. So did we show you when you came that iron meteorite?
Those 2 rocks.
Yeah,
that
2
you
rocks,
yeah.
How did you do? Get it right?
Taylor got it right, I got it wrong.
Oh, well, it's an average. All right, that's good. Okay. Yeah, so the heavy one, the one that is the meteorite, is 93% iron, 7% nickel. It's the same composition as the core of the Earth, but the core of the Earth is still hot and liquid and radioactive. You don't want to go there. But so the ones that are further out are more like soil, and that's what this one in New Plymouth could be. In between, you get some beautiful rocks which have peridot or olivine crystals and in the iron. It's a very unusual structure. You don't see it anywhere else. So there's basically 3 types: irons, stones, and stony irons. And this
Nice.
one in New Plymouth is a stone.
Is there a jewelry trade for meteorite stones,
There
meteorite necklaces?
is actually, yeah, there is. Yeah, for these ones, the peridot is what we geologists call olivine. It's a sort of not quite your green and your jersey is much too bright. It's more like this sort of color of green,
Nice.
almost an avocado green, and it's a lovely translucent gemstone.
The
Yeah.
inside of avocado, for those listening, not the outside.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, when you mash it up,
Thank
that's what it looks like.
It's important.
You didn't put any avocados, yeah.
Oh, man. Next show.
Yeah,
Guacamole.
that's right. Yeah, and there are other things called tektites. Have you heard about tektites?
No. Please
Okay.
tell me more.
You're glutton for punishment.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so I'm really old. I grew up in the space race. When men went to the moon. I actually met Neil Armstrong, as I think I mentioned to you before, and I saw one of the moon rockets go off. About that time,
After this tektite, we're going to go back to that.
okay,
Yes.
yeah. So about the time before they went to the moon, there were these rocks, little black rocks called tektites, which they found, excuse me, largely in Australia and a band across Australia up to Indochina. Fairly narrow band, and they thought, these are not quite like Earth rocks. They must be where meteorites smashed into the moon, and moon rocks have splattered off under the Earth and landed in a streak across the Earth. And everybody said, "Oh yeah, that's right. Of course, that's right. Obvious." However, when they went to the moon 6 times. 12 Americans walked on the moon, and they brought back about 300 kilograms of rocks. And analyzing those rocks and looking at them and the tektites are much more like Earth rocks than moon rocks. So we now know the tektites are not from the moon. What we do now think, and it's pretty certain, is what's happened is actually meteorites hit the Earth, splattered Earth rocks up into space as molten rocks that have gone up into the atmosphere, come down as liquids, and solidified as they came down. And you get nice dumbbell-shaped ones. I don't let me show you them. They were here, but we've got them. Dumbbell-shaped ones as they spin, or ones that come down like that, a teardrop shape. And some of these, there's a variety in Czechoslovakia called Moldavites, okay? And they are lovely, again, a greeny color, and Moldavites are actually used as gemstones, or can be. I think it's a real shame to cut them up, but because they're beautiful things. But, yeah, so tektites.
Well, I suppose it would be hard to wear it with a ring, wouldn't it? Yeah.
Well, it's
If you got a rock size.
Well,
it's so
I think you wear it
lovely.
around your neck. It's actually, they are beautiful. You can look through them, and they're translucent and lovely green color, Moldavites.
What about the story with the rockets when you saw the?
Oh, well,
Tell us,
I grew up in the space.
Where were you? Give us all of it. Where
Well,
were
I
you?
grew up in Montreal in Canada, and I was totally involved in the space race in the 60s because it was all happening then. I remember the first satellite going up. Does Leica mean anything to you? Named Leica?
Leica, yeah,
The dog.
Oh,
No, not
the
the Leica
dog.
cameras.
No,
No, you
no.
think of Leica cameras, very good cameras. No, this is Leica the dog, Russian dog. Leica was the first, I think, a living thing to go into space. Died because the Russians didn't provide any food or water for it.
damn
Bloody
Russians.
pricks, eh?
Come on,
Yeah, that's the worst thing they've ever done.
shit.
Yeah, so Leica went up and came down, and then of course Yuri Gagarin, the first man in space. Remember that? Nobody knew people could survive space. That's why they sent the dog first. The Americans later on sent a
And then he
monkey.
died, and they thought, oh, bugger.
But the Americans sent up a chimpanzee called Ham, because chimpanzees are more like humans than dogs are, and they actually looked after their animal, and then brought him back down again. Yeah, and then they sent men up, of course.
None of the other fellow apes would believe his stories.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah, well,
All the sign language you can teach him, and he gets there, he goes, stuff it.
yeah, that's right. And the Russians, of course, were very advanced in space. They were the first satellite in 1957, the International Geophysical Year. And the first animal, dog if you like, and the first man in space, the first woman in space, Valentina Tereshkova. She was the first woman. And then the big space race was who was going to get to the moon first. But I remember very well, one of the most disappointing days of my life was 1957. I'm that old. I was 10, I think, and living in Canada. My father came home from work with the paper, with the Montreal Gazette, and it had the first picture of the backside of the moon. And nobody knew what was on the backside of the moon. And we had all these ideas. There would be cities there, or dinosaurs, or things. And the pictures came back. They were crappy pictures, but all you could see was craters. It was so disappointing for a little 10-year-old.
So you needed Pink Floyd to come up with a better idea.
That's right, exactly. Yeah. And the same thing happened a few years later with Mars, of course. The Mariner.
6 years later, you're right. Yeah.
Was it 6 years later?
6 years later,
Yeah.
63.
Yeah, about 64, the first spacecraft went to Mars. And, of course, everybody thought there were canals on Mars. And even scientists like Carl Sagan, there's old pictures of him standing at NASA with a globe behind him with canals all marked on it. And everybody thought, oh, well, maybe there's the civilization there. This is what they thought, that you can see the ice caps melting on Mars, even on my little telescope. You can see the ice caps melting over the seasons. So they thought these lines were canals bringing ice from the poles to the center of Mars for irrigation. And that was a theory. People believed there were actually Martians there. But the first spacecraft to go there, the Mariner 4, I think it was, came back, and all you could see was craters. So it was so sad.
Imagine the disappointment.
I was very disappointed. Yeah, it's really sad.
Alistair, what I always think, like when I see these space missions and everything like happening, and like so much investment into that, and I remember we had a chat about that, but I love your take on it, so that's why I'm gonna ask again live, so you can. Why do we go for these missions out in space? I know there's a big cliche, but like with all this shit that is happening in the world.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly.
Why do we spend so much money? So what's your take on that?
Well, people said in those days, in the 60s, why don't we spend the money feeding starving Africans? Now, I've spent a lot of time in my life. I've lived for years in Africa and Madagascar and places. There are a lot of starving people in Africa. Unfortunately, there always will be. Hopefully, we can get fewer and fewer people starving in Africa. And the starvation in Africa is mainly due to politics, not due to not enough food. It's politics and distribution of food. But that's another story. But people say, why spend the money going to space? You know, what's going to come out of it? But I think every cent that's been spent, every dollar that's been spent in space has been well repaid by one thing. Do you remember what the answer was?
Well, the weather
satellites. Weather satellites. Okay. Weather satellites have saved millions, if not hundreds of millions of years since the first satellites went up in the 60s, predicting cyclones, hurricanes, storms, those sort of things. It's totally changed our view of the world. I remember very well, I think the first weather satellite was the TIROS, T-I-R-O-S. I don't know what it stood for, American one. Before that, everybody thought the Earth was like a globe. You could see all the continents and the boundaries and everything. But now we know the Earth is covered at least a third in clouds all the time. You know, nobody ever knew that, and it's totally changed our weather forecasting because we've got weather sites we see on the news every night. You know.
But I once read on social media that the weather is complete myth, and they always seem to get it wrong.
They do seem to get it wrong. Do they get it wrong more than half the time? That's the question. But they can tell us what the climate's going to be in 100 years.
It's so helpful. My great-grandchildren are going to be so stoked that I knew better than they did.
But better warn them. It's going to be fine. Tell them it's going to be fine.
And another thing that I find fascinating, and I like the take of geologists and astronomers, humans seem to love to get things sorted. So we love to find answers for everything.
Yes.
You know, we create codes, or we believe in the books that someone wrote and everything. But I find when I talk to people like you that there's beauty in not knowing things, in going after answers all the time, realizing you were wrong, changing your mind, talking to people, challenging your beliefs. So how frustrating it is for you to see so many people just going for whatever they see, whatever they read, and putting their whole lives into whatever, and not going for.
Well, I think
it's good to not know sometimes.
Yeah, but you should always be curious. Surely that's one of the essences of life, is being curious about things, having an inquisitive mind. And there's so many things to learn. Just going back to the moonshots and things. The first spacecraft to go to the planets were the Voyager ones in the 70s and 80s. And they were going to go to, say, Jupiter and look at its moons. We thought, what's the point of doing that? Oh, the moon's going to look like our moon. But of course, we know they're totally different. Every moon is different. We've got moons around Jupiter with volcanoes, sulfur volcanoes. Right next to them are ones totally covered in ice. And that is a place where we might find life one day, on those ones with ice.
Life as we know, or maybe just because that's why Rick and Morty is so cool, and I think we should all send it to you.
Okay.
That's the thing, because you just said, the sea is quite recent, which means that these conditions that we have on Earth are maybe quite unique. That's why we are like we are. So maybe it's
No, I don't like it. I don't like it.
Okay.
All right. So there are billions upon billions of possibilities based on so few fundamental elements that we know of, right? In terms of the periodic table, there's only so many elements. The heavier ones are in the greatest abundance. So the vast majority, you could assume.
No, sorry.
Help me. Yes.
The
The
lightest one is the great abundance, which is hydrogen.
Sorry, hydrogen, helium.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, all the stars emit hydrogen.
But I'm saying the biggest ones, the heaviest, are what we know that that have clumped together to make these lumps of
life. Well, what's life made of? We're all organic compounds. So carbon,
nitrogen.
Nitrogen. Yeah. Well, carbon and nitrogen, and oxygen. Yeah.
So the idea of looking for life on water-based. What's a generic term for a floating orb of dust? Like, so if a moon could have life on it and a planet could have, what are they all? Floating objects.
Well, they could be floating anywhere. They could, of course, be floating in Venus. And Peter Beck wants to send a spacecraft to Venus. Good old Peter Beck, Kiwi Peter Beck. He wants to send a spacecraft to Venus because he thinks there could be life floating in the clouds of Venus.
Really?
Venus is a very interesting place. If you look in the morning, if you look out the east, it's so bright. Do you guys get up at 5 o'clock?
Only if I'm going to...
I have before, not that often.
There's life before 6, you know.
Yeah, Whanakahoa's beautiful sunrise out there.
Yes.
You get out there and you look in the moment, if you I don't know where you live in Whitianga, but if you look out at the east, before the sun rises, where the sun's going to rise, you can see 4 planets.
Yeah.
Okay, they're all lined up, and actually at the moment they're all lined up in order of their distance from the sun, which is unusual. So if you look overhead, you've got, almost overhead, you've got Saturn, which is slightly yellowish. And the way you tell a planet is they don't twinkle. Okay? Generally they don't twinkle unless they're very low on the horizon. Stars twinkle, planets don't. So
satellites twinkle.
Satellites don't twinkle. They can go on and off. If they're space junk, they're tumbling. Very regular, on and off. Usually they're rocket boosters and they're tumbling around. Okay, because they just have reflected sunlight. So if they're tumbling,
they're
you get
reflecting.
They have no lights of their own, satellites. Okay.
I like this. This is good.
Anyway, so tomorrow morning at 5 o'clock, you're going to check, make sure he gets up?
Yeah,
okay.
I'll call Fabian.
Okay, Fabian. Okay.
Yep. His mom will probably call him first.
Yeah, so if you look straight above it, you'll see Saturn, slightly yellowish, not hugely bright, but it's not twinkling. Below that, you will see a much brighter one called Jupiter, the biggest planet. Okay, it's quite bright, distinctly bright. Below that will be slightly reddish Mars. It's about the same brightness as Saturn, but it's got a distinct pinkish tinge to it. And below that is Venus. And Venus is like a searchlight in the sky at the moment. It is stunning. And people call that often the morning star when it's in the morning. Sometimes it's in the evening star. Yeah, but 4 planets for the price of 1. How good is that?
Very good.
And you might and if you're up really early, you might just see a little tiny faint Mercury on the horizon, but it's really hard to see now because it's getting very close to the sun. Point of view.
So there was a Kiwi who tried to get to Venus, or he's
no, Peter Beck. Well, Peter Beck Rocket Lab. You've heard of Rocket Lab? The company.
You were going to tell us about Rocket Lab.
Yeah. Well, some of your listeners might have heard of Peter Beck. He's a Kiwi, and he has started this company called Rocket Lab, and they have decent-sized rockets, not as big as Elon Musk's rocket, but decent-sized rockets, which they are made of carbon fiber, totally carbon fiber, and they got their technology from the America's Cup yachts, I think. This is one of the spin-offs from our America's Cup program here in New Zealand. You know, people say, it's a lot of money and you don't get anything back for it. Well, you spin off other industries, and we became, as a country, very good at carbon fiber boats. But that technology is equally applicable to rockets. So Peter Beck, for about 10 years, maybe 15 years, had been making rockets, carbon fiber rockets. His first one was launched from Great Mercury Island.
Oh.
Do you know that?
No.
No? Okay, just off from Katuna there. It was quite a small one. I forgot what he called it now. We don't know if it actually got into orbit or not because they lost communication with it, but he launched this rocket from Great Mercury Island.
Well, it's a very upset fisherman.
Yeah, it was quite a small rocket, but it proved the concept. Anyway, he's gone on to do wonderful things, and now he's got this complex at the Mahia Peninsula, and he launches rockets from there. And he's been very successful. The one went up yesterday.
Ah.
Yep.
Good timing.
Yep, and they launched 4 or 5 small satellites. But the big thing was they are trying to recover their boosters. They come back through they parachute back through the atmosphere, and they have a helicopter tries to snag the parachute and recover the boosters. Not an easy thing to do.
That sounds like a fun job.
Well, you want to be a good pilot. And nerves of steel, I think. But they've managed to do it on several tests. Not rockets coming back from space, ones they dropped from another helicopter higher up. The one yesterday, they managed to snag it. But then there was a system warning on the helicopter that there was something wrong with the weight, so they had to let it go. But that was fine because they had a boat below and they just fished it out of the water, and that's what they've done in the past. They've fished these rockets out and tried to reuse them. But Peter Beck wants to be able to catch them in the air so they don't get all the engines wet. Saltwater and rocket engines is not a good combination. There's 9 little engines there. And I think they cost about $3 or $4 million for the booster. And he says, but even if it costs $1 million to get it back, or $2 million to get it back, or even $3 million, even if it costs as much to get it back as it costs to make the thing, it's a plus. because they can take that back and they can refurbish it quickly and have it launching again, make more money out of it. You know, it's recycling rockets. Elon Musk, of course, is the expert in that. He does even better job.
What do you think about Elon Musk?
I think he's a very interesting guy. You know, SpaceX. He's got so many fingers and so many pies. Tesla cars, SpaceX, Neuralink, artificial intelligence, the Boring Company, and of course Twitter.
And Coke. He's going for Coke next. Coca-Cola.
Oh,
You reckon?
No, I'm joking. But he made a joke on Twitter. I don't know if
did
you
he?
saw
Oh, okay.
that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
He said because he bought Twitter and then he said, now I'm going after Coca-Cola so I can bring cocaine back into the recipe.
Cocaine.
Great sense of humor, right?
Well,
Anyway,
yes. Well, I wouldn't put it past him. Actually,
it would help a lot of children out there. Eh?
Yeah, I don't know about that. Yeah, but he's an amazing guy because he has perfected this technique of reusable rockets. You know, because I think, as I said, I saw one of the Saturn rockets go to the moon, and it's a huge, big rocket. It's 111 meters high, and you get back to the tiny little capsule, half the size of this room with the 3 guys in it. That's all you get back of that huge rocket. And Elon Musk says it's crazy. It's like flying to London in a 747. You get to London and throw the plane away. Then you have to build a new one to come back. And he's right. It's madness. But those rockets were developed during the Cold War in the 60s and 70s. The idea was to get to the moon as fast as possible to beat the Russians, which the Americans did. But now he's trying to be a bit more responsible and bring the cost down. So he has his rockets which land back down again. Have you seen them?
I think last year I watched the first civilian.
Yes.
Go, and it was my first time ever watching one, and I watched it for about an hour and a half. It was fascinating.
Pretty exciting stuff.
Fast, and you just look at the speeds, and you're like, oh, it's going up, it's going up. They're going thousands of kilometers an hour.
Well, they're going 8 kilometers a second.
It's just
when they're in orbit. That's the speed you're at.
And yet they're sitting there.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Would you go to space?
I'm probably a bit old, but I would love to. Yes, I'd love to. But of course, the cost is going to come down. I couldn't afford it, but the cost is going to come down, and eventually it'll be easier to get to space, and it won't be so arduous, physically demanding. Because I've had people going not into John Glenn, who was the first American to go in orbit around the Earth, he went back up in the space shuttle, I think, in age 90 or something. He was he became an American senator, then he went up to space. And then I've had a woman not going right, just up and down, not into orbit. She was 92 or 93, I think. And William Shatner, of course, he went into space.
I remember that. I heard
He went straight up and straight down. He didn't go into orbit, but he did go up into space, and he's not a young man. So there's hope yet.
Yeah.
There's hope yet.
Would you, Fabian?
No.
Anyway, in a word,
it will be of no benefit to me, really.
Could you tell him about
lovely view.
the priests
Lovely view.
with the balloons in
Oh, yeah.
Brazil?
Yeah, sorry.
It just has no value to me. I mean, if it had value to me that I can go do this so I can help or make a difference or have a job where I can be useful, but I'm not the person to make things. I'm not useful in that situation.
well,
So
how
it's not for me.
about saving humanity? Is that a good reason to go into space?
Are you suggesting I need to go up there and help breed?
Yes, yes. Elon Musk wants you.
Thank you, Alastair. I'm going to be breeding.
Is he hiring for that?
Not yet, but
That would
his
be
plan.
fascinating.
Of course, Musk wants to colonize Mars,
Right.
and he is building the biggest rocket ever made. It's called Starship. It's as big as the American Saturn V went to the moon, but again, it's totally reusable. These rockets are incredible, biggest engines ever made, and they can take 100 people at a time. He wants to take people to Mars. He wants to launch 1,000 of these at a time with 100 people each to go to Mars. He wants to get a colony on Mars of humans breeding and reproducing on Mars. And this is why he's doing these other satellites, the Starlink satellites and all those other things, to make money to fund this rocket of his to go to Mars. And I think it's, again, why bother, but I think it's a brilliant idea, and I totally support him on it, because he wants to save humanity, human consciousness. He's worried about consciousness. That's the way he phrased it. Because he says, here we are, we're all on Earth. Bad things can happen, One, we could have a nuclear war, wipe us all out. 2, we could have COVID 35, 45, whatever, wipe us all out. Or there could be an asteroid impact. Ask the dinosaurs. So for the first time in the history of life on Earth, there will be a species, us, who within less than 100 years will be able to save itself from what happened to the dinosaurs. And that's pretty significant, because he says, we were talking about earlier on about other life in space, and we don't know if there's other life out there. Depending on how you run the numbers and how life eases to form life, you can say there's billions of civilizations out there, billions and billions and billions, which raises the question, why haven't we heard from them? Or we could be it. That the conditions are so unique There's so many things so many ducks have to evolve, get in line for life to form, that we could be it. Now, we perhaps owe it to the universe to make sure we don't get wiped out by an asteroid like the one that killed the dinosaurs. So once we have humans on Mars, the human race will be able to survive something happening on Earth, something nasty happening on Earth.
And something awful happening on Mars.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah, that's right. Well,
nuclear war on Mars. You get 10 years in. They're so clever. They've got all these weapons.
Don't let Putin there, right? Keep Putin away.
Yeah.
No, but it's be interesting. Once that happens, once we get people, once you're breeding on Mars, okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Two chances, right? Yeah.
I've only got sort of 30 years left before it's impossible.
No, that's plenty of time. Okay, so once you get there and you have kids, maybe not your kids, but your grandkids will never be able to come back to Earth, because the Mars gravity is much less than the Earth's gravity. So your heart was going to develop to be very weak, your muscles will be very weak, your bones will be thin, you won't be able to come back to Earth. So at that point, the human race is going to split. It's going to be Earthlings and Martians.
Wow.
Within probably your lifetime or your kid's lifetime, it'll certainly have. Musk once is hoping to get people to Mars in his lifetime. He's 50, 40,
So maybe
50.
all these ideas that we have from extraterrestrials beings, maybe it's a prediction of something that is going to be ourselves. Maybe they are humans.
We could be Martian. We may become Martians.
Hey,
But the reverse could be true as well. We could have been formed from life on Mars, because we know that meteorites from Mars come and land on the Earth. Not very many, but there's been quite a few, not many compared to other meteorites, but there have been a few Martian meteorites found. And it's possible, we think the bacteria and the seeds, if you like, of life can survive in space, in the vacuum and coldness of space for a long period of time, especially if they're inside rocks. Because most of the life on the Earth is inside rocks. It's not on the surface. The surface is just a scum. Most of the life is inside rocks in the Earth, down in cracks and things, kilometers down. So life on Earth could have been seeded from a meteorite from Mars landing on Earth. Life could, in theory, have started first on Mars, and we could all be Martians. Descended of Martians. But once we go there, we'll know. We'll be able to look for former signs of life, your cities or whatever, or canals, which there's no canals, but there could be sort of signs of bacteria or maybe even fossils on Mars.
So
there's all these possibilities.
This is going to be a stupid question, because I've heard this question.
There's no stupid questions. There's only stupid answers.
Oh, here we go. Here's the first stupid question.
I'll give you the stupid answer. How's that?
So far, in none of this, you have explained how this relates to the flat Earth.
Society, Inc.
The flat Earth, yeah. Because, and I say it sounds, but I have heard this legitimately without the face creasing in a smirk.
Well, maybe we need to all get together, chip in and buy them a ticket on one of Elon Musk's rockets and look at the curvature of the Earth.
Just give them a friend in Australia and ask them where's the sun right now.
Well, ask them to explain when they're watching a ship with a mast going away from you, why, first of all, you lose the ship and then it gets lower and you eventually lose the mast. Okay?
I will ask them that.
What's happening? The only way to explain it is the Earth is curved.
It could all be a conspiracy, though, right?
It could. There's so many conspiracies out there.
The boat could just be slowly lowering the mast. All boats have telescopic masts. Masts.
And how do they make the boat disappear then?
Magic.
They're all submarines.
Alastair, do you have faith
In what?
in something?
Not really. No, I don't think so. I do. I'm not religious.
Because I remember when we were chatting at the Stargazers, like at your place, that you were doing the thing with explaining to us like how far it goes and how big, and then like you got to this last stretch of what we know, and then you were kind of like, and then we don't know, you know, like, and then I was like, well, cool, we don't say, like, so
that's great, isn't it?
It's fantastic, but like with that thing of having consciousness, that it's another thing that we cannot explain, right?
Yeah,
I guess.
Yeah, what is it?
What is it?
Ask
so, like,
Elon Musk.
I'm just curious, like, from your perspective of digging, and knowing that there will be a time that you'll be like, there's no explanation for this yet. You know,
well, we don't know everything. We don't want to know everything.
It's beautiful. I know.
don't want to know everything.
I'm just.
You want mysteries out. You want to keep. It motivates you to go and learn things and explore. You know.
There's a great quote by Tim Minchin in one of his rambling songs. He's an Australian comedian, musician, brilliant psychologist and musical writer, who talks about every mystery ever solved has turned out to be not magic. And I just sums it up for me.
Science is magic. You know, things which we're doing now are magical. You know, going to space. You know.
Yeah.
making new elements, changing one element to another, transmutation. We do it now. We do it in nuclear power stations all the time. I'm a great fan of nuclear power too.
Are you?
Another horrible thing.
Well,
Yeah.
so
Well, you've got it in Brazil, haven't you? Haven't you got nuclear power stations in Brazil?
if I got away, I'm sorry.
In Brazil, you come from Brazil.
Yes.
You have nuclear power stations there, don't you? I think.
Do we, Taylor?
I don't think so. I think it's mainly water.
I know Argentina.
Hybrids,
I think you might. I think Argentina. I know Argentina
I can
does.
Google it.
Yeah, Google it. Yeah, just let me know. Yeah,
So
I could be telling you lies.
But I suppose you're speaking of nuclear power as in
Power stations.
a more modern version of power stations, not
I'm
gigantic leaking sappy pools where cracks are forming and
Yeah.
fish are growing
We
extra
can
heads.
make good nuclear power stations.
Oh,
There's
I'm
hundreds,
sure we
hundreds of them
can.
around the world. They've been going since the 1960s or 50s actually. Yeah, yeah. It's a very interesting thing. The nuclear.
Yeah,
thing.
it says that we have 2 nuclear reactors, and it generates 3% of electricity in Brazil.
So by getting
Thank
it
you.
right, what are the benefits of nuclear power?
It's virtually limitless. The power. In a very small area, you can generate a huge amount of power. You know, my poor wife, she gets dragged around to all sorts of places around the world with telescopes, incineration plants, power stations. And one of my brothers in Canada, he worked for a company called Aotearoa, the power company there, and he took me around to some nuclear power stations in Toronto when they were being built. It's really interesting. And I've, as a geologist, I've worked looking for uranium in Australia and in Africa and Morocco and all sorts of places. But
Why? Sorry. What's the thing with uranium? that is-
Uranium is used as fuel for your nuclear power stations. You need
okay.
uranium.
Got it.
So before I did that, I had to justify myself that it was worthwhile doing it, was the right thing to do. I thought I was happy about looking for uranium to be used in power stations. And I totally convinced myself that it was, and I believe it now. Nuclear power is the way of the future.
You use the B word. You believe.
In my opinion.
I believe.
The evidence
I believe.
suggests.
Yeah, that's right.
No, sorry. Carry on. You were saying.
No, it's a very safe form of power generation.
I'm an absolute science novice. I love it. Love talking about it. But so uranium power source to fuel this process that gives us more power than we could gather out of uranium. Or
No,
so
the
how do we
uranium.
use that?
The uranium produces basically
Is the-
heat,
Yeah.
and you use that heat to basically boil water to run a turbine. It's like a coal power station or a gas one or whatever. It's basically you're boiling water, like a steam engine, just boiling water. It's more sophisticated. You might use a turbine. You're boiling water, so you've got to boil water, either coal or oil or gas or uranium. The nuclear reaction produces huge amounts of heat. You know,
So
and all
Okay.
you-
yeah.
So it's literally a fuel, as in.
it's a fuel. It's nuclear fuel. Yeah,
I've
that's
never
right.
imagined
It's what
that.
fuels the sun. Nuclear reactions fuel the sun, our star. All our energy comes from the sun, from nuclear reactions. It be it converted into coal or oil or whatever. It's all come from the sun originally,
Right.
which is nuclear. We're a nuclear powered world, really.
So correct me if I'm wrong. In order to get these elements, you need to do the mining.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, we have to mine.
And then we get to this another one, polemic one.
Bring it on.
Well, mine, especially in our area,
Yes, of course.
right? So, do we need to do that? Do humans rely on that because of how the world is right now, or
Well, we need things. Okay, we need glass. We need metal. You know, the glass comes from. Where does it come from? Where does the glass come from? Sand mines, mining sand. You know. And all the rage now is electric cars, and you know that's the big and wind turbines. For those and solar panels, you need huge amounts of silver. Huge amounts of silver. Okay, where does silver come from? From silver mines. Do you know the Wahi mine?
it's huge?
Do you know what they mine there?
I do not.
It's just I've been there. It's huge.
It's huge. Yeah, it's promoted as a gold mine, but it's a silver mine.
Right.
The ratio of silver to gold is about, I think it's 8 or 9 to 1. It varies around the peninsula. But obviously, the most of the value is in the gold. But the actual stuff they produce mostly is silver, which we need for solar panels and electric cars and all these sort of things. So there's a huge ethical issue, I think, about mining. Do you want to get into this sort of stuff?
Yes, please.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Probably all your listeners are turning off now.
We are adjusting the chair so much tonight.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
so
Marcus,
interesting.
this is
Yeah,
Great.
okay, well, everything we do has an impact. Everything, okay? And you can't make an omelet without breaking an egg, the old story. So if we want to have solar panels, so should we mine in New Zealand, or should we mine somewhere in China or New Guinea or somewhere else where the environmental controls will not be as good? The pollution will be worse. So I worked I've lived in 12 different countries around the world from extended periods doing geology, visited about 40. Nowhere that I've been to does environmental regulations as well as New Zealand. Pollution control and that sort of thing. So really, let's say we need silver for solar panels, where's it going to come from? Should it come from a mine in New Zealand, which is environmentally very sound, or should it come from a mine out of sight, out of mind in the Philippines or China or New Guinea or somewhere where the controls may not be as good? What's the ethical thing to do?
Well, out of sight, out of mind. It sounds great to me.
That's what we do with plastic. Remember, we did it with plastic. We solved the plastic problem. We sent it off overseas. Now, as I mentioned, my poor wife, she gets dragged around in telescopes, but she got dragged around to an incineration plant. One of our sons lives in Bern in Switzerland, the capital of Switzerland. So I've been interested in incineration for a long time, and so we arranged for a tour of this plant. It cost quite a bit, but we went there. It's a lovely building. It's designed like a ship, to look like a ship. And what they do there is they take waste. Essentially, everything goes in your blue bag, in your rubbish, like even little batteries. It goes in and it's burnt at very high temperature in a very sophisticated plant. It's burnt. And we saw guys rolling up there with trailers and sofas and dumping them all in. It's burnt at a very high temperature. And out of that plant, you get 21 megawatts of power, which is quite a lot of power. And you get heat, which they use for heating buildings and things. And you also get 5 tons of iron a day, 5 tons of non-ferrous metals, which is copper, nickel, and that sort of stuff, cobalt, and heat and power out of that station. And you go to see the smokestack on top. You go up to the top of the building. There's no smoke. There's no smell. There's a bit of shimmering heat. The control is so great. It's got to be kept at a high temperature all the way through. Otherwise, you can get PCBs and those sort of things formed. But if you keep the temperature about 1200 degrees, everything is burnt and turned into power. Right next to it, they have another plant, same sort of size, and all it takes is builder's waste, wood and that sort of thing, and forestry slash. And, we've had trouble in the Gisborne with the forestry slash going out on the beaches and things. So that's a much simpler process. The pollution control can be much less sophisticated because it's a pretty simple feed for the plant. And beside, they have a third power station, which runs on natural gas if they need extra power. And it's the way to go. The plastic is not a problem. It's a resource. We should be burning it. We use it once for a plastic bag or to make something, then you burn it. You don't bury it, because some plastics you can't recycle it. You burn it, and you get power out of it, rather than having to burn coal or something else. And all these power stations are very big, and of course in Osaka in Japan, they've got one designed by Huntavasa, the guy that's Frederick Huntavasa. They've just opened a new museum of his up in Whangarei. He does really quirky buildings, all curved windows and grass on them, and he was Austrian, I think. He lived in New Zealand, and he designed a lovely flag for New Zealand. But so the one in Osaka is designed by him, and it's actually a tourist attraction. There's one in Vienna, Austria, where he came from, a lovely quirky building. If you Google incineration plant in Vienna, and you'll see a picture of it. It's a beautiful building. And they have one in Copenhagen, not designed by him, but it's actually got a ski slope on it. And these things are something we could do in New Zealand very easily. Rather than having landfills and spending hours, you think of the hours collectively as a country of 5 million people we spend sorting our rubbish. Burn it. You save all that sorting time. You save the collection time. You save all that landfill, and you make power. So you don't have to import coal or use your own coal or gas or whatever. And
so the negative byproducts. Well, what are negative byproducts? Say if when you're in Switzerland, Bern.
Well, you go to Bern, and it's right on the edge of the city. Mm-hmm. There's no smell. There's no pollution. There's no negatives. It's all positive. You avoid all that landfill, you avoid all that sorting, and you turn what's a waste into a resource.
So this is where Leo's now going to interview going. So is there the man in power in the chair hiding the solution from us? Take it away, Leo.
Well,
it's so easy.
Well, I think humans create necessities, and then we have to find a ways to keep feeding them, because when we hear, oh, that's the Vienna incinerator that you mentioned.
Huntavasa. Yeah, Osaka's the same. Yeah, it's a lovely building. And there's a new Huntavasa museum opened in Whangarei about a month ago. If you ever go up that way, it's
okay.
same sort of style. Yep. And that's actually an incineration plant.
It's quite quirky.
It's quirky. Well, he's done lots of designs of buildings in his hometown.
It's
and
a blue
they're all
sky.
quirky.
So
Not all smoking.
so where I was going with it, Alastair, and I wanna just
You could do Osaka as well. One in Osaka.
just want to get a little bit more out of you from the mining thing, because the way I see it is like, okay, when people say that they don't want the mining, they're
mining.
clearly worried about what's going to happen to nature, because humans are interfering in nature, and then like why he doesn't look good. I don't know if that's good or bad, but it's just like a huge hole for for someone who has no knowledge about what's happening there.
hole.
You look at it and you're like, what, why Grand Canyon, what's happening here, you know? So
Grand
sorry.
Canyon. Ask me about Grand
Okay,
Canyon.
let's go. Remember me with them. Okay, but like, so that's the thing. But then humans have a lot of necessities, because a lot of humans are quite progressive. But like the ones who are progressive kind of leads the game. So everybody has to keep up with having a cell phone, having a car, blah 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 blah. So what you're telling me, it's like we have to get these resources out of nature to feed this lifestyle that we kind of established now. So I understand when people don't support mining.
Okay.
And I would support them even more if they were not using as much technology as they could. Right? Okay.
Exactly.
Okay. But then when you tell me that mining actually helps a lot from what we're doing, you must have like something wrong with like something that is not great about mining, because
Well, okay. The one thing's not.
you're changing nature in a way, right? It's not that great.
Well, yes and no. We do need things. We need stuff. We want stuff. We want microphones. We want studios. We want TVs. We want things. You know, and we want clothes. Well, clothes are made of nylon, comes from oil. You know, we want things. So everything we do has a consequence.
Yes.
You try and minimize the bad things and accentuate the positive. So if you want minerals, you've got to mine them, unfortunately. And actually, the Waihi mine's very. And it depends where you can't. I'm not saying you should mine everywhere in the Coromandel. No, not at all. You have to choose very carefully where it's the right place to mine, and that's where underground mining is so much better than surface mining, because it's done underground and there's a very little effect, if any, on the surface. But the Waihi mine is a very famous mine. In the 1890s, it was the second biggest gold mine in the world. That mine. It's been going since the 1880s, 1890s, and it's still going now. And it's mostly underground now. They've got the big pit, but that pit, when they're finished with it, will eventually become a lake. Okay, there was a lake before. There was a hill called that Martha Hill. On top of that, there was a little lake. Then they mined that away. Now it's a bigger hole, so it's going to be a bigger lake long term. Yeah.
Right.
But we need things. We need gold on these plates. You know, our cell phones are made of so many minerals, and gold and silver are heavily amongst them in your cell phone. Where's it going to come from? Okay, you can recycle it, but you got to have it start getting it from somewhere. And people say, "Oh, well, you take gold out of the ground and you bury it in Fort Knox somewhere," you know. And it sounds crazy, and it is crazy, but that's the way the world economic system is built up on gold reserves. And whether that's good or bad, I couldn't comment. I'm not an economist. It seems crazy, but that's one of the uses of gold. But we use gold in our everyday goods, you know.
Yeah. For me, like, I understand your concept, but it feels like we're eating our own tail. Like, especially when we connect to the start of the conversation with like, oh, someone is trying to save humanity by taking them to another place. For me, it kind of feels like, oh yeah, this rich, very powerful people, they know that we're fucked. Like, they know that we're consuming everything on Earth already, that we're eating from the inside, and they're kind of like, well, might as well try to escape. Like, so I'm not arguing with you. Like, I agree, I disagree.
Yeah.
But for me, when I reflect on it, it's like, yes, we do need the cell phone, we do need this, we do need that, but like, because we keep creating more necessities for humans. And then we keep getting from ourselves, from nature, you know, like, but maybe the damage that we're causing might be irreversible. And that's where I really sit on my ignorance level of not knowing.
Well, this is where you need to bring people and make them wealthy, because you don't look after the environment. You know, I worked a lot, as I say, in Africa and Pacific Islands and so on. People there haven't got enough money to do anything but live. They need food and shelter and fuel. But once you bring up a population up to a level, even a lot less than we are, richer than we are as our society, you can afford to spend money on things like planting trees, looking after the environment, doing that sort of thing. But poor people in poor countries can't afford to do that. Their daily grind is surviving. And, if even things like cooking, having lived, as I said, in Africa, what are the basic fuel they use there, the very lowest level is elephant dung. And same in India. Cattle dung, elephant dung, you can dry that and it's a fuel. It's horrible, it's polluting, and you're in grass huts and you get smoke and you get lung cancer, and it's environmentally very bad for you. It's unhealthy. Next step after that is you use wood. That's a bit better. But then the women spend, if you ever live in an African village, the women are going out half their day to get firewood, chopping down trees, to bring it back to burn it to cook food. That's not good, and again, it's smoky. The big step forward is charcoal. You take that wood and you bury it on the ground and you burn it with a little less oxygen and you make charcoal. And charcoal is wonderful because you can have a charcoal fire and you can leave it. The woman doesn't have to stand there all day fanning the flames. She can actually set the charcoal fire and go off and do other things. Spend time with the kids, do a bit of planting crops or whatever, and come back and look after the charcoal fire. So that's a big step forward. Next step forward is coal, much more portable, much more energy intensive than charcoal. Then you get on things like gas and oil. And there's all these stages of progress, and it's developed by having more money, being able to afford things like coal or gas.
Right. And then
energy is critical to everything we do. Right. And once you have cheap energy, you can have lights. Kids can actually read books at nighttime and learn.
However,
teachers, it's really important.
However, not much light, right?
not too much light, exactly.
So for the people who are listening to our podcast and cannot see what I'm holding right now in my hands, it was funny because it's a great segue. Alastair,
he's clever, isn't he? He's clever.
I'm
He's done this before, haven't you?
Oh man, I'm working my way up. So Alastair brought these great flyers that says Dark Sky Community Project, and please tell us a little bit more about this. What am I holding in my hands here?
Well, as you're probably aware, light pollution is a problem. It's an insidious problem. Light pollution is caused by lights shining up into the sky. And if you've ever been to big cities, you can't see stars, you can't see the Milky Way. We get a lot of guests in our B&B, Americans. They've never seen the Milky Way. It's so sad. People my age have never seen the Milky Way. So we're very lucky in New Zealand. We have these lovely dark skies. We can go out and see stars. We can see planets in the morning if you guys get up at 5 o'clock tomorrow morning. Okay. But a lot of people can't see that. And I've been in Katoona for 40 years, more than 40 years now. Even now, I've seen a change in the light pollution, largely because of you guys in Whitianga with more lights and things. But it's an insidious thing. You don't notice it from day to day, but over decades you can see the change. And we're losing the dark sky. And half our environment is the night sky, the dark sky. It's half our world up there. So the idea is to control lighting, so you don't have light spilling up into space. You have it lighting the ground, which is what you want. And I'm on the committee of the Katoona Ratepayers Association, and we've been banging on about this since 1998. Our first survey was done, included lighting things, and I've been making submissions to the council from 2003 onwards. The council is very supportive in general, but the idea is just to control lights, so you have lights which are pointing downwards rather than upwards, your exterior lights. Mm-hmm. You have them not too bright, and you have them properly shielded so the light goes down. And you can have bright lights, but they're on a timer, so they go off, when you're not there. And just stop this incredible growth of light pollution. And there are health benefits as well, because especially with the blue light is very bad. We're learning that now with our cell phones and things like that. So a lot of these new LED lights, street lights and things, they're good because they point the light down rather than up. They don't spill so much upwards, but it's very, very blue. And blue light is not good.
So how are we supposed to contact Batman when we are in need?
You can turn them off and on really flat. Do you remember, Morse code?
With the beep, 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 beep.
Yeah, turn them, you do it with the lights as well. Yeah, he'll understand
or
that.
get him
He's
a
pretty
pager.
smart.
Get him a pager.
Oh, that uses gold and silver.
But I suppose it's the image as well that you want to be able to put the bat up there against the light.
Yeah,
and you want it to be bright too.
Well, lights are not good for bats. And birds and insects, they run into them, they get killed.
So it's almost insulting to them, isn't it?
And that could bring it back into wind turbines and things. We're just going back to uranium.
Yes.
Do you know where the richest uranium mine was in the States? The highest grade uranium mine?
Grand Canyon.
Exactly. Well
hey.
He joins the dots, doesn't it? He joins the dots.
He put the Morse code together.
Yeah, I'm paying attention.
Yeah. So if you ever go down, I don't know if you mean to go, if you can walk down to the bottom, as you walk down, You ask the guy, they'll show you where the uranium mine was. It operated until the 60s or 70s, not that long ago. And you never know it's there. But it was the richest uranium mine in America, highest grade uranium mine in America. And of course, they have a lot of nuclear power stations in America.
Alastair, what is very like sought after nowadays with all this technology that we have? Like, what is the element that people are like?
Lithium.
Lithium
And cobalt and nickel and copper.
Is it Bolivia that has the biggest one of lithium?
The Bolivian one, yes, it's undeveloped.
Right.
But in the salars up on top of the Andes, Chile,
Yep.
has got lots of them, and they're basically it's brine. It's a hot, very salty water comes up out of faults.
Yes.
Up there, and it evaporates, and you get lithium produced. It's wonderful deposits because it keeps on forming itself. And that's the lithium we need for our batteries, for our electric cars, for our cell phones, for everything else. We need these lithium batteries. And
I've heard from my uncle, Uncle Michael, shout out. He's not watching.
is that good or bad?
I couldn't care less.
That's bad.
So he's told me that the throwing out of these batteries, these car batteries, these lithium batteries, they're terrible for the environment. They're ruining it. You think you're saving the environment, Fabian? Rah, 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 rah.
Good on him. He's my man. Okay. A lot of these things. What do we do with them at the end of life cycle? Okay, lithium batteries for your cars. Anybody's got an electric car knows that the range is not great, but it's going to get less and less and less over time as your battery goes through repeated charge and discharge cycles. They tend to deteriorate. And it comes to a point when you can only go down to the grocery shop and that's it, and your battery is dead. So you have to get rid of it. So what are you going to do with it? And the great idea is you have, and this is where I don't agree with Elon Musk, he has these things called power walls. So you have in your house, you have a lithium battery which stores the power from your solar panels or whatever. But these batteries are usually the older ones, which from your car it doesn't go anymore. So you're not solving the problem by having these power walls. You're just delaying the ultimate decision. What are you going to do with this battery? And you're just delaying putting it out another decade out. And we don't know what to do with them. Lithium things are really dangerous. Did you see there's a video a couple of days ago of a bus fire in Paris? Did you see that one?
No. We're not online.
You're so updated. I'm feeling horrible here.
Google Paris bus fire. About 3 days ago.
Easy.
And if you can show it up there, it's really interesting.
So what was the thing? Was it?
These lithium batteries can catch fire. They were a real worry in planes earlier on. And Fan Airlines had a lot of trouble with them. There you go. Okay, can you get the video up there? The video is interesting. It happens so fast.
Taylor will have a look on YouTube if he can find something.
Yeah, it will be on YouTube. Yeah, and this is not the first time. And these batteries, lithium. They had a big fire in a battery farm in Victoria late last year, earlier this year. These batteries can spontaneously catch on fire. That's why if you go on a plane, they want you to take your batteries out and store them, have them with you in the cabin rather than in the luggage hold, because it catches fire in the luggage hold. A fire in a plane is not a good thing. Yeah. And people want us to have electric planes. Madness. Or electric ferries.
Madness.
Or fires in planes are very serious. There was one that went from Brazil to Europe, and it caught fire. I think it might have been a Swiss airplane, and it crashed, of course. Fires and planes are not a good mix.
I just laughed about the way they said madness, not about the idea. The idea is a horrible idea.
You're a sadist. You're a horrible person.
No, it was just funny. Madness. I loved it. Like the Iron Maiden song. Can I play with madness?
Yeah. And the other, let's go back. So that's, what are you going to do with this waste? And the other one is plastics. Okay, if you're not going to incinerate, the great idea with plastic bags is we'll make fence posts. That's a good idea. There's a company in New Zealand that started making fence posts. Have you heard about that?
Just seen that. It's an advert. I think I got sent.
There we go. Watch this.
Oh, yes.
Watch how fast this happens.
Were there people inside? It was just parts?
Unfortunately not. No, you can see it's got his flashers on. He obviously the driver got out. There must be something going on. This happens so fast. Now, I don't want to be in a plane with lithium batteries. Thank you very much. I do not want to be, or in a ferry. They're talking about electric ferries. No, thank you.
For those of you watching, it's like a pot boiling over, but instead of steam and water, it's liquid metal, and it looks like a fiery haircut.
Yeah, it's the lithium batteries on the roof. Now, why they have the batteries on the roof? That's a dumb idea as well, because they're very heavy. Sun, right? Well, no, it's very heavy. It makes it totally unstable. You want your batteries. Center of gravity low.
It's like
there's the other bus getting out of the way.
Look at the guy in the back. Let me get out of here. Whoa!
And these lithium fires, you cannot put them out. You can't do it with water because they get so hot and they make their own oxygen, their own oxidizer, and you can't put them out with water. And what they do now in the Netherlands with car fires, electric cars, they take them and put them in a big container full of water. That's all you can do. Pick them up, You've got a container handy, so they have special containers for car fires.
Wow.
I don't want an electric car in a basement of an apartment building I'm living in. Thank you very much. And that's what they're going to charge them. That's what.
So don't park my car in the house because I'm going to get a hybrid.
Okay, park it outside.
Park it outside.
Hybrids aren't as bad, but they've still got lithium batteries. But they're not. They're only charging when you're driving, I think, is my understanding. When you're going coasting
so
down.
mine will be a plug-in hybrid.
Okay. Where do you live? Which city?
Might have to chat to my neighbours.
Okay, I'm loving this chat, but Alastair has to go soon, so I'm going to read some of the comments from the audience.
Can I go back to the fence posts?
Yes.
yes.
Sorry,
Okay,
you
so
didn't finish.
it's great.
Sorry.
It's another brilliant idea. Make fence posts out of plastic bags, and it sounds good. But so the farmers are buying them because they're quite light and they're reasonably strong. So you plant them in your paddocks. They're going to break down over time. Okay, they're UV stabilized, so they won't break down as fast as a plastic bag. But over 10, 20 years, they're going to break down because they're going to have dust on the ground, plastic dust on the ground and in the ground. So all you're doing is taking the townies plastic bags and putting them on the farms in New Zealand.
Brilliant.
Long term. And okay, people don't like farmers anymore. It's not popular to be a farmer. That's not the way to treat farming. It's not a solution. It's just delaying the problem.
NZ Post.
Burn it. Make power out of it.
NZ Post have just sent me a message last night. Actually, I just read through it. For $7, I can buy a soft plastic bag to put in my soft plastics.
Yes. How big is the bag?
I got the email. I don't know how many I've put in there, but it's $7 to apparently destroy farmers in the future.
I wonder what happens to it. Do they say where it goes? The plastic?
Not directly.
I thought the dairy industry was doing that already.
Sorry?
I thought the dairy industry was doing that already.
Doing what?
Like ruining the soil and everything. That there's more to it. Alastair gave me the cheeky laugh. Let's go for the. Let's go for the. Should we go there, Alastair? We don't have time.
Oh, yeah, no, fine. No. Yeah, go.
Comments from the audience. Yeah. So Fabian says, "That's beer can is an inserted sponsor. The bros own you at least $5." Thanks, Fabian. You're a good man. Yvette says, okay, gotta say it, prompted by someone's costume this evening. May the 4th be with you all. Thank you. I see what you did there too. Star Wars, Stargazers, nicely done. Thank you, Yvette. And there's a cool question from Christine. She asks 2 great questions. Do you think there's life out there? And then she says, what's something false or incorrect that people always assume about geology? We kind of covered a little bit about the life out there.
Yeah.
But this is a great question. What's something false or incorrect that people always assume about geology?
I think people think geologists are just going around making mines and wrecking the planet, causing pollution. But actually, geology is providing things we need, like glasses, like microphones, like everything we need comes from the earth. Everything that's yours is mined. Okay? Everything. Everything we use is either comes from the ground or comes from things we grow. So we need to have mines. Now, you don't want them everywhere. There's places you shouldn't have them, but certainly underground. Unfortunately, with mines, you can't just have it over there because it's an industrial site. You can't. Or you can't, because metals and things don't occur everywhere. They occur in concentrations. So unlike an industrial plant or a smelter or a dairy factory, you can't put it where you'd like to have it. You have to have the mine where the stuff is.
Is there a surface effect that civilizations have just so happened to plant themselves at the most rich mines, or is it generally a good spread?
The mines are everywhere around the world.
Yeah.
But some countries are more blessed than others. You know.
But in terms of like the most rich spots, are they already populated by humans, or are there
not necessarily, no.
endless examples of other ones?
We don't know them all, of course, because we're still learning. But we know where some of the big concentrations of minerals are out in Australia. Number strike two.
Strike two, yep.
Time's going on.
Yep.
Yeah, but generally, where there's a mine, if it's in the outback of Australia, there will be a small town around it to
So
it.
you've allayed the fears, I think, of a few people in the community, because you're talking about if we could do it properly,
which we can.
We should mine.
Well, not everywhere.
We're done.
Yeah, and certainly open pit mines, open cast mines like Waihi, you don't want them everywhere. You don't want them around here. But I can't see the same sort of problems with underground mines, you know, because you're taking stuff out from underneath. And
how deep do we talk? How deep do we talk in mining?
Oh, the deepest mines in the world are in South Africa, 2 or 3 kilometers down. You know, long way down. It gets really, really hot. One of our sons is a mining engineer, and he works in Australia. And you have to air condition the mines. The biggest air conditioning plants in the world are in mines. You touch the rocks, they're maybe 60 degrees centigrade. Really hot. You have to have your air conditioning. You drive down in vehicles, you have to have them running all the time to get the air conditioning going. It gets hot. Because as you get down to the center of the earth, it's hotter and hotter and hotter. The earth gets hotter due to radioactivity in the earth. That's why the earth is warm.
Wow.
Did I answer the question? No.
Yeah.
I think you did. I think you did. It's beautiful.
Robo4, nuclear power station is a good thing, Alastair, but what about nuclear bombs?
Not a good thing. Not a good thing.
Not a good thing.
No.
Not a good thing.
Oh, yeah. Well, yes and no.
Oh,
okay.
yeah. Now I'm interested.
Do you want me being controversial?
You got my attention.
Well,
you got my attention.
I don't want a nuclear bomb here. I know. Certainly hope Putin doesn't use one. But you could make the argument that since the Second World War, and my father fought in the Second World War, and since the Second World War ended in the 1940s, we've had no big world wars, and it's probably because Russia and America have had the bomb. Once you've got the bomb, you can't disinvent it. You can't get rid of that knowledge. Everybody knows about it. So unfortunately, in an ideal world, you'd say, forget about bombs and you can't make a nuclear bomb. Unfortunately, everybody knows you can make a bomb, and it's not that hard. So we've got these bombs, and I think it's probably kept the world a safer place so far.
I agree.
Oh, okay.
Because we had two world wars 20 years apart, and now we've had, since 1940, what's that, 60, 80 years with no serious, okay, we've had Vietnam, we've had Korea, we've had Afghanistan, now we've got Crimea. These are not good things, but they're not world wars. They encompass all the countries of the world. So it could be worse. Hard to believe, but it could be worse.
There you go. Alastair's take on war. We talked about that. We will talk about war. So there you go.
It's not a nice thing to talk about, but
no, but it's good. That's what ALTBAYS is all about. We want to have conversations.
And the world is good. Things are getting better. The world is really getting better. Everything is better. I'm more healthy. Will live longer, and I have more money than my parents. Your kids will live longer than you. Be more healthy. Be richer. Have more stuff. And so it goes. The world is getting better. The gap between rich and poor, we're bringing more people out of poverty now than we ever have in the past. There's always going to be a bit of a gap, but the world is getting, in every metric, we're healthier, we live longer, we have more things.
Fantastic.
I can't think of anything that's worse.
Neighbours.
I love it.
Neighbours. Too close.
People with hybrid cars and next door to you. Where do you live again?
Cook Drive.
And buses in Paris. Okay, so
right, don't take the bus.
Guys, thank you so much. This is such a cool live chat tonight. I'll try to go over all the questions. If I can't, sorry, next time. But there's a cool question from our friend Fauzi Hassan, fantastic artist from Auckland. And he says, thoughts on the idea of mining asteroids? And thoughts on the prospects of the James Webb Telescope?
Second question first. The James Webb is fantastic, that telescope. I never thought it would work because it's been delayed literally decades, cost billions of dollars more than they predicted, and a very complicated structure, hugely complicated, folding this little telescope up to get it into a rocket. And they've done it, and they've got it in a place called the L2. It's out past the moon. It's a very weird sort of place where they can just park it there, and it stays there. And it's got to be really, really cold, so it always looks away from the Earth towards space. Yeah, it's a fantastic telescope. We're going to learn a heck of a lot. It's a bit like gravity telescopes, or gravity wave telescopes. So they're another great thing. What was the other question? Thoughts
on the idea of mining asteroids?
Yeah, that's been raised, but I think to bring the stuff back to the Earth, it's probably not worth it, because to send a rocket up there and bring it back, and it's not going to be easy. But if you're trying to build a city on the Moon or Mars, especially Mars, that would be a good idea, because it's quite close by and it's a heck of a long way to get stuff from the Earth to Mars. It's really hard to get things out of the Earth's gravity, really hard. But if you've got an asteroid sitting next to Mars, you snag it or mine it or whatever and just shoot the stuff down to Mars. That's where it's going to happen. It's not going to happen here. And of course, asteroids have a lot of nickel, because they always remind of the nickel. Well, if you bring back an asteroid, a 10-kilometer wide asteroid's worth of nickel back to the Earth, what's going to happen to the nickel price?
It's going to go down.
Well done. So
Thank you.
No point.
Can you grab the book behind you, the yellow one? So I got one last question before we wrap it up, but I just the top one. So yeah, just to mention our friend Fauzi Hassan, that one is a fantastic one too. But Fauzi Hassan, who just sent the message, he's a fantastic artist from Auckland. You can find fauzihassan.com, and we love his book, and it's permanent here in our scenario. So yeah, Can you see it from there, Taylor? Thank you. Thanks, Fabian.
What does he do? What does he do? What sort of art does he do?
He's a visual artist. He's a fantastic visual artist, but he's also a poet.
Poems.
A poet as well. Oh my goodness. Multi-talented.
And by the looks, he's enjoying what you're talking about. So he's tuning in, which is
Venus
pretty cool.
Rises.
Venus, right?
He's got a poem. Would you like to hear it?
Do you want to read a poem for us?
Would I be okay?
It's a short one, right? Yeah.
There's nothing to talk about. Couples set to break apart in beautiful manners. She cries on the escalator. She has a new tattoo and dresses to be seen. With flaming expectations and a beast of a soul eating from inside, her special leftovers, marks of wasted weekends, scars of a gentle body. Her eyes watered, black tears rolled down, snowy skin, total eclipse.
Very good. I like it. I like it. Well done.
Never read it. Very nice.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Fauzi. And
awesome.
an easy one. Hi, Alastair. It's from Hanako. Thanks, Hanako. Did you always want to work with stars and be a geologist from a young age, or was it something that you got into as an adult?
Well, I went to university to become a geologist, and geology is the greatest profession. If you want to travel,
Silence in the room.
if you want to travel, geology is the way to do it. Especially when you're young and not married. You know, you go to so many interesting places, and it gives you a totally new outlook on the world. Wherever you go, every day, everything, every rock you look at, every landscape you look at, you will see it with different eyes. You will see the history in that landscape. And especially going on planes, you always find me by a window seat because you can see so much from a plane, you know, the history of the land below you.
The person on the aisle seat must love you.
It's usually my
Did you
wife.
know that? Did you know? Lean over. Did you know this?
It's my wife usually is asleep. Yeah, it'll change. Every day you will see new things you would never see if you didn't do geology. It just gives you a totally new outlook on the world around you.
You know, we were talking just before we went live, and I thought Leo made a pun incidentally, and we had a
He
joke.
wouldn't do
but
that. Did he make a pun? Not him.
I just sat here looking at you, and I thought, geez, you just said geology, and in the stars, you're a literal rock star scientist,
Right.
which is just so stupidly good.
Yeah.
I'm caught up. I don't know how I feel about it.
There's rocks from space, of course, which are asteroids.
That is
and
true.
Meteorites, and that's that connection between astronomy and geology. You know, there's a bit of a connection there.
It's beautiful.
Alistair, I think we're going to have to get you back, man, sometime soon because this is
When are you starting paying again?
too much fun. As soon as we
2030.
start
I'll be
paying,
back.
man,
I'll be back.
you'll be on for sure. What a pleasure. This is such an inspiring and so informative conversation. So
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for your
Much
time.
appreciated. Yeah.
would you like to wrap
enjoyed
it up? Anything else you want to ask, or we have a couple of minutes? You good?
I am very happy. I've learnt a lot. I've gaffed up the heavy and light elements in my head, and for all to see, the 6 people watching live, thank you for your questions and for watching that.
Nah, 6 people talking on the live chats, but many more chatting with us. Sorry?
I think you want to make a question to Fabian as well by then.
Name 3 female characters from Star Wars.
Leia,
1.
is Chewbacca female?
2.
One of the little bear, I think they're Ewoks, the Ewoks, there must be female Ewoks. I'm sorry.
We'll take that. Thank you so much, Fabian.
Thank you very much.
been
May
a
the
pleasure.
4th be with you.
Thank you. Thanks, Alistair.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
And for the people watching at home, we're live every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 p.m. YouTube channel, ALTBAYS. Have a look there. Subscribe to our channel. Like our videos. Go on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and listen to our podcasts. We're loving doing this. I hope you guys are enjoying it. We're coming back on Friday with an amazing show, and I'll see you there. Bye.
Woo! ALTBAYS. That's a wrap. We're free.
ALTBAYS.
ALTBAYS. ALTBAYS.
Yeah, that's the goal. Just let me get the gem at the end.
Oh, thanks, guys.
Oh.
Do you know Thomas Everett?